Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm videodiary. As you see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where if you probably couldn't tell via today's episode, we're going to be talking about Encanto, just to get out in front of things. This is not me like recreating Encanto and Animal Crossing any like this. This is my daily video diary where I'm going to talk about Encanto because that's kind of what I've been doing for the past like 600 days or so. not talking about Encanto, I mean talking about things. Yesterday I went to go see Encanto with some friends, and basically on the whole I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good movie, a pretty good musical movie I suppose. Of course there's things I have small gripes of it, but they're not really big gripes, but mainly the songs are kind of banging. Anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow it's 2:07 PM on Monday, January 10th 2022. This may not count as news, but I see we have a crazy red being others today, which is completely fine. We'll go check out what he's selling. But yeah, there's a lot to cover in Encanto. It's very strangely a Disney movie that has me thinking about it quite a lot, which is not very common for a Disney movie, because to be fair, Disney movies a lot of the time are quite surface level when with the depth they portray, and often things get resolved quite neatly. But Encanto has a lot of different things going on inside of it, which makes me really, over the past day I've been sort of like mulling it over in my head. I'm going to warn you before I get into any like major spoilers, so I'm just going to do my sort of overarching thoughts now, where basically my overarching thoughts is I quite like it. I really like the songs, quite a few of the songs, not all the songs I would say in it. And what's most interesting to me is how much more of like a musical direction I suppose it goes in some previous Disney movies. Now, bear in mind, I haven't seen a lot of the modern day Disney movies. I kind of stopped watching all of them around the time of Frozen, but I've seen a few of them. I haven't seen things like Luca. I haven't seen the one before Luca. I can't remember. Oh, I haven't seen Moana, stuff like that as well. I know Travesty. I haven't seen Moana. Moana is apparently one of the greatest ones, but still. But it's a very heavy musical direction, and in some ways I suppose it does sacrifice the plot, kind of, to go in that direction. It does a thing the musicals do, where a lot of the plot progression and that sort of thing happens sort of like intertwined within the song. The song is the progression in that sort of sense, and my overarching feelings is I really like what I saw. Kind of wanted a bit more, to be honest, which is often, I suppose, a good thing to say. It's a sort of thing where I would have liked, wow, and I never seen two snowballs right next to each other. Well, I would have liked to just, see a little bit more, have it be a little bit longer, or maybe cut out some parts of some other things. I do generally like how it sort of does break the formula. I'm not going to talk about how well it presents Colombia, because I'm not Colombian, I don't really know, but from what I've read about other people's opinions online, but a lot of Colombians seem to reasonably like it. I'm not going to say all of them, I'm sure other people have grabs of it. It is, I assume it's a Disney-fied sort of version of Colombia, of course, and you should take it as not much more than face value. I don't think we need any of these unless this is something we need. Amazing painting. This is where I probably should have got the videodiary notepad out about it. Yeah, it sacrifices a bit about plot, because the one major complaint I suppose I have about this movie is the plot progresses at about 1,000,000 miles per hour. It is so fast paced. Like things just sort of happen, and like character arcs get resolved like within the space of a song and things like that. Things happen far too quickly, which on the whole it doesn't really matter too much, but it starts to matter, I think, a little bit when it comes to sort of like the moral teachings it's trying to show and that sort of thing. Hold on, what's this random WhatsApp message I get? I didn't particularly expect one today. It's okay. It's not something I need to be particularly concerned with. Anyway, yeah. It gets a little bit murky with some of the moral teachings that it ends up trying to teach about with the speed, I suppose, it covers it. But anyway, okay, we're going to start delving, I suppose, into, well, not yet, actually, but the main thing I actually want to talk about is actually a lot of the character designs, I suppose, in the movie. Okay, now we're going to start delving into a lot of potential spoiler warnings. So if you haven't watched Encanto, I would recommend you go watch it. It's on Disney Plus. I've heard, at least I didn't actually verify that, but I assume it is. So on Disney Plus, go watch it. It's a pretty fun time, and it's not very long. It's like an hour 40, I think. So you can certainly do that rather quickly. Okay. Anyway, so the whole plot of Encanto, on a surface level, I suppose, especially for children watching it. Younger children is watching it, they'll take away the sort of moral lesson about Mirabelle not having a power but still finding her worth and being special in that sort of way, despite the fact of being surrounded by people who feel so much greater and more amazing than you. And to be fair, that was kind of the expected plot. If you watch a trailer and you understand the premise, you're like, okay, you're going to find out Mirabelle's either going to get a power at the end, or she's going to find out she's special anyway without a power, etc, etc. but with a lot more underlying themes, I suppose, which is what makes Encanto much more interesting. Is that it covers quite a few more adult topics, or much more adult, I suppose, worries, I suppose, which, you know, not to say that children don't have them, but I suppose become much more prominent through teenage years and through the older years, is what I'd imagine. Firstly, the backstory, especially to the abuela, the grandma. I'm not like an expert on it, I suppose, but it's actually quite dark because it's about, as I understand it, like a period in Colombia, not too long after the Second World War, or something called like La Violencia, or something like that. Forgive my Spanish, I don't really know how to say it, but it's violence. It was just a horribly brutal time for people involved. Yeah, and that's essentially the backstory. It was the grandma being affected by it, and Encanto has a very sort of strong theme of what's it called? I forget how people describe it, but I think they describe it as generational trauma. You know, the trauma received by the grandma and how it affects how she brings up her children, and how it affects them, and how they bring up their children, that sort of thing, and how basically the trauma stemming from 2 generations up eventually keeps trickling downwards, I suppose, and having negative effects downwards. Sorry, I keep getting WhatsApp notifications, and I'm not particularly sure. Oh, it's fine. it is in fact nothing to do with me, so I'll just put my phone on silent, just like in the movies. And generational trauma and how it affects people in that sort of way. Obviously, I'm not Colombian, or I didn't grow up in like South America or Latin America or anything like that, so the story doesn't quite relate to me. But I'm sure a lot of people could probably find relatable things in that sort of story, and, you know, find a way to connect to it in certain aspect. But certainly, actually, I think I read a lot of the time is, and previously in other Disney movies, and I haven't seen many people be like, I really connect to Frozen, or like Elsa in a certain way, or I don't know, in a certain way, like in more than a surface level. But a lot of people seem to really connect to some certain characters, I suppose, in Encanto, which is honestly pretty cool. And to me, that's kind of what I suppose the creation and things and like art is about. But of course, everyone's mileage may vary. So yeah, it's a really dark backstory for Grandma, one which you didn't expect, and one which is subverted, because in the beginning it's told quite in like a fairy tale one, is a sort of like a wishy-washy tragic way, like, oh, the husband sacrifices himself, but then, you know, it's later revealed when the abuela tells the story again that it was actually horrific, that the grandpa was murdered in front of her eyes with her newborn triplets as she was running away from, like, I assume some like bandits or something, burning down her town and everything that she knew and had. And it's about her sort of like trying to raise an entire village or something, and then being blessed with a miracle to actually sort of carry that sort of burden. And the rest of the story about her trying to earn it and preserve it to make sure that she doesn't lose it all over again like she did before. Not to say that it excuses her actions, because this is, I suppose, where the bad part of the pacing comes in, is the fact that with the grandma especially, she has done like years and years of traumatic treatment, I suppose, of both her children and her grandchildren, and then it sort of just gets like swept up and forgiven quite quickly within about 5 minutes. And that's not so much to do with the actual story-wise why I think that she shouldn't be forgiven, or necessarily like she shouldn't have some sort of redemption, I suppose is probably the better way to put it, but more that it happens far too quickly and far too is accepted extraordinarily quickly for the song, not for the song, for the movie. But, you know, that's just, you know, one of the faults of it, the pacing going so lightning quick, is it just happens to happen quickly because they literally just don't have any time to cover it any further. Yeah, no, I'm not sure what else there's something else I want to say about that. There's going to be so many things I'm not going to be able to talk about because I'm essentially not going to think about them, I think. But, yeah, but there's some nice imagery, I suppose, of things which are, as I understand it, quite important in, like, Colombia. I forget what the book's called. 100 Years of Solitude, something like that, which is, like, a very prominent book in Colombia and has a yellow butterfly as a strong motif. And motifs are also a thing which are pretty cool to see throughout the movie, because they, sorry, it was like a hard swerve away from the plot because I kind of forgot what I was talking about in the plot. I didn't really want to delve too much into plot because it's things which other people have covered far better than I have, to be perfectly honest. But the thing I haven't seen as many people talking about is actually the character designs are really, like, well thought out. And the animations are fantastic, and it's always like, oh wow, big surprise, you know, Disney's pretty good at animating, as it turns out. And then, you know, the characters are quite nice. Yeah, the character designs in a whole are pretty nice, because one, they're quite a lot more diverse than you see in some previous titles. You know, people always like to point fingers at Frozen, and for a reasonable reason. because there's not actually all that many people you see in Frozen who tend up being main characters, so a lot of them sort of like blend together, but a lot of the characters are quite surface, like they're not too deep, I suppose. And the story does suffer in elements because of that. Oh, you know, wait, hold on. I want to jump back to the musical point. Because of musical pacing, things get resolved in a musical number really quickly, so you had to assume a lot of what happens in plot progression, which would have happened if it wasn't a musical, would have happened through actual conversation and would feel a bit more sensible, is what I wanted to say. Okay. Sorry, a bit of a tangent, but yeah, the character designs are really cool, and it certainly helps that with creating these characters that they have magical powers, and the powers can be based around their personality, which can really accentuate the presentation of the characters and tell more of a story, I suppose, and how the powers sort of synergize and anti-synergize, I suppose, with them. It's quite a useful tool, that sort of thing. Personality powers, as I believe, the TV tropes pages if you want to read it. So it's nice to have a little tool, and it's also nice to have like an ensemble cast to give like a sort of variety of different stories and perspectives which can be told. So I guess we'll sort of just go through all the characters and talk about them. Like visually, there's a lot of like running motifs through the thing. Like if we start with Abuela, she's obviously got the motif of a candle being, you know, candles often being like a symbol of hope or whatever. Keeping the candle burning as a sort of like a ongoing pressure of something which could be very delicately taken and broken, not broken as in like glass, but like swiped away, like any just like one strong gust and then suddenly the candle's put out, is essentially the sort of imagery that's going on, and it's all about keeping the candle burning, and in her case keeping the tradition alive, which is essentially a metaphor for. But it's also really nice to see how the literal visual designs are actually reflective of these motifs as well, because if you look at the grandma, around her collar there's like little candle flames which are burning, you know, to tie into that motif. Down her dress there's like these like big triangular shapes, which I assume are meant to be the mountains that she raises up through like the candle's magic or something, which is meant to of course reflect the security and the sort of closed offness of the entire town itself, and the insular nature that she reflects, I suppose, pours into the family itself, like being secluded, I suppose, from everyone else. And then at the bottom there's a butterfly motif, which, you know, you'll notice is present on her and Mirabelle, which is of course a symbol of rebirth and that sort of thing, and I assume a symbol of hope. I forget if it has a different particular symbol. I know it's symbolic in that famous book in Colombia, but I would probably default to someone who knows more about it to talk about that than for me. But of course butterflies are often a symbol of rebirth, you know, hope in that sort of sense, and fragility, I suppose, all sort of tied up in one. And the fact that both she has it and Mirabelle has it, so it's like an ongoing cycle of magic, because, you know, there's a theory that Mirabelle is meant to be like the next successor for the family, the one to look after Casita, which I think is cool. That is reflected in her thing. Also, she's her colours are very much in the reds and purples, which is on the polar opposite end of the greens. Yeah, the sort of green colour that Bruno is dressed up in, to show the sort of like diametrically opposite. To show the opposition, I suppose, against each other. I don't know if there's anything else about Abuela I particularly wanted to say. She had the pigtails when she was much younger, which a nice little detail was reflected in Isabella's. The way Isabella was dressed up, I suppose, when she was younger too. I thought that was a nice little detail, because, you know, the Abuela is like sort of projecting upon Isabel for the perfect life that she would have wanted, etc., etc. Can I think of anything else? No, I think that's about it for Abuela. And we can move down to the parents. We're starting off with, oh, you know, just a side point. The husbands in this movie, fantastic. You know, it was, I suppose, refreshing in a certain aspect to see just like couples who like genuinely loved each other, had no troubles. There's no question about them being perfect for each other, basically. But starting with Juliet is the oldest. Juliet, I feel like there's not as much to talk about really with her. Obviously, her powers, she can heal people with the meal she feeds to people. She has a lot of like a apocotherapy, like herbal remedy sort of motif going on. Like you can see in her apron, there's like a mortar and a pestle, and there's a load of like herbs. There's herbs like stuffed into her pockets as well. She's wearing an apron to sort of like reflect like the chef nature of herself. I assume she's colour blue because it's meant to be like a very sort of motherly colour, isn't it? You know, like Mary, I suppose. Was there anything else I want to say about that? There's not really much to say except for, you know, of course, the pressure that the Abuela gives on to, you know, entire family to, give back to the community. Hers is, I suppose, the most direct of it. She's meant to be like a caretaker in both sets of the world, and the caretaker that actually, feeds the village and family, but also because, she caretakes and heals the family and the village in that sort of aspect as well. But she's never actually really shown being affected as much by the pressure, which perhaps that's symbolic in its own way, but she's the one who understands it best or something, maybe because she's the eldest sibling. I don't really know. Perhaps it's meant to be a sort of symbolism of her being most mature in a sense. I don't really know, but either them, also it could just be like a storytelling tool because they needed like a caretaking sort of parent. The father, a nice thing about his visual design is that he's got parts of all his daughters in his outfit, because he's got like a little flower tucked into his lapel from Isabella. He's got one sock decorated with like the dumbbell motif for Louisa, and one with one with the butterfly motif for Mirabelle. Apart from that, he's just wearing a very sort of basic outfit, I suppose. There's not really much to say. I couldn't because they don't have powers. Both Felix and I can't remember his name, Agustin, Giulietta's husband. There's not really much to reflect, I suppose, upon their motifs. They don't really have a motif, which is fine because they're just kind of normal people, to be honest, who married into the family. And a nice sort of thing is that he's very accident prone. Of course, Giulietta is the one who heals people, so there's sort of an implication that she's healed him a lot or something, and that's probably a strong connection that they have with each other. It's nice to see that he's also very caring as well, rather than sort of rejecting Mirabelle. He stands by Mirabelle and seeks out to protect all opportunities and stands up against his mother-in-law, I suppose. When Bella's just like, we're trying to protect the family, and then he was like, I'm trying to protect my daughter or something. I can't remember the exact line. Anyway, good parents on the whole. The only really like setback is Giulietta like not believing Mirabelle entirely. But it's kind of like fair, I suppose. It's kind of hard to tell. That sort of situation goes on. We'll come back to Bruno, so I guess I'll get to Pepper now. Pepper, of course. Pepper, you can see much more. As the first character, I suppose you see, maybe not the first character, but one of the characters you can see being much more strongly affected by Bella's influence. Of course, her power being controlling the weather based on her mood and that sort of thing, and how she's sort of not allowed to embrace her emotions and that sort of thing. She has to be smiley all the time, because that's what Abuela wants, because Abuela just wants the sunny weather, and there's constant idea of the fact that she's not really in control of her emotions because she doesn't have a healthy mechanism or outlet to really like talk or cope with them. But Felix, being of course her husband, is the only one who can sort of like really calm her down when it comes to these sort of things, and is the one that whenever she gets like stormy and that sort of thing, he's the one that sort of like brightens up her day. Her visual design, of course, very reflective of weather. The most obvious thing being, she's very yellow. She's got a very like spirally and funnily out sort of dress. It's a very flowy dress, and she's got a spiky collar around it to of course represent sun rays. She has a lot of weather motifs in her thing, in her design, because she's got sunshine looking earrings. But they just literally look like a sun. She's got some near the top, I can't remember, which looks like a sun. I think it was like sun rays or something, I can't remember now. And there's also smaller details which I didn't see people notice, is the fact that she's got little cutouts near the bottom of her dress which are like thunderbolts and clouds, I think. And then if you actually look at the bottom of her dress, she's got like little sort of like very faint dots, not dots on them, but like small lines, which is meant to be rainfall, as I understand it. But of course, in those aspects of her dress are much more smaller and much less pronounced compared to the sunshine part of it, which is of course the one which Bella wants to see, and it's the one that's very dominant in her entire personality, or forced dominant. And it's not until the end which she can actually embrace other weather and her other emotions, which she finds a healthy outlet for it, and it's shown as not to even be that much of a bad thing, as she's shown happily dancing, I suppose, under a hill. And it's another thing which I take a side note is Encanto actually foreshadows things pretty well, like the personality problems. Like despite the fact that they didn't have much time to really cover the entire things, they show it off very very quickly and very effectively. Like the fact that when Pepper was talking to Anton, and she was just like so proud of him that he's grown up so quickly and that sort of thing, and a little rain cloud was above her head, showing that it's not always for bad things necessarily. She's obviously feeling kind of sad, being like, oh, look at my little baby all grown up, I grew up so fast and that sort of thing. So it's sort of like a good and bad, a melancholy, you might say, which is nice to see. Felix, of course, his design also incorporates things from his own children, like his like red sewn stitching things which go down the shirt is the same thing that's around the collar for Dolores. I'm not really sure what was borrowed from Camilo. I'll be perfectly honest. I assume it's because the stitching goes down, like the 2 bars on Camilo's like poncho thing. I don't think it's actually called a poncho because I think it's Mexican, but it might be called a different thing in Colombia. I apologize, I don't know what it's called. And of course, like the stripy of his trousers is reflected in them. Anton's shirts, it's like the same colour and stripiness. Yeah, so it's called Suva Designs. I also feel like there must be something significant, like imagery-wise, through the, like, the bandana that's wrapped around Pepper's head, but I couldn't think of anything apart from, like, you know, maybe it like makes a yellow sort of circle, which is meant to be like reflective again of a yellow sun. Also nice to see like different skin tones, I suppose, throughout the entire family, which apparently is, you know, quite common, I suppose, in Hispanic families. Again, you know, there's obviously a wide variety of skin tones that humans come in. what a weird way to phrase that. Human beings can even be. So I see that reflected. Apparently, that was a common criticism of some previous things, that they tend to be very sort of like secular, so I suppose, with so diversity. So that's pretty cool to see. What else? I don't think I've had anything else to say about Pepper and Felix. Not really, they're just, you know, they're, of course, made for each other quite well. Yeah, then we get to Bruno, and he's obviously got the motive of, like, running sand. Sand time has anything to do with time, obviously, because that's, you know, pertaining to his powers in the first place. It's about the ticking sands of time. He's got, like, hourglasses on his poncho, which hourglasses always can look like butterflies in a certain aspect, which perhaps foreshadows a little bit of a deeper connection that Mirabel and Bruno will have, being sort of like outcasts. He's also wearing like the clothing which is way too big for him, you know, not fitting for him, like how he doesn't fit in his family. It's very sort of rough around the edges, again, like kind of how Bruno is. And one thing I would say is Bruno's animation is really cool to see. You can see it especially the way he like stands up around the thing when he almost falls into like a really not bottomless cavern, but quite a deep quote quote cavern. He just sort of like, instead of like standing up like in a sort of wave like most people, like the other people are sort of animated in a sort of like a gradual animation, he just basically pivots at the hip, and it looks very unnatural. It looks very sort of robotic in a certain way, which sort of adds to a sort of like incongruous feeling, I suppose, which comes from Bruno. And it's nice to see his sort of like quirkiness. Oh, not quirkiness. Quirkiness makes it sound like, oh, cute. Or quirkiness. More his eccentricity, I suppose, and is very sort of like obsessive beliefs in certain aspects of his like repeated mantras to try and preserve good luck and, you know, not hurt his family. Is there anything else about Bruno? Not really. He wears green, of course, that's diametrically opposite. The 3 different like families from the Abuela wearing yellow on Pepper's side and blue on Giulietta's side and green on Bruno's side, which is just him and kind of Mirabel, but not really. It's kind of cool. I suppose we've got the children now, the grandkids. Isabella being the oldest. Of course, she's got a very, very strong flower motif. Like her entire dress is just covered with flowers. Pink, she's got a very princessy dress. And of course, you know, sort of she's honestly kind of like a Disney princess, and a traditional Disney princess in his own right, which I suppose is sort of like a mockery of it in the first place, about how they're so unbelievably perfect, and you know how she on the surface is trying to superficially like also unbelievably perfect as well. Despite, you know, of course, she's not under the surface. Even if that's not her song. She even has like her own song is very sort of like it feels like a much more traditional like Disney heroine sort of song, which is surprising that they didn't try and promote it as the go-to song. It seems like Surface Pressure is the one that we're going for, but you know, I think all the better because Surface Pressure is a bop. She actually has long flowing hair, which is interesting compared to like the rest of her family, which is like very curled hair. Maybe it's something which she straightens, or maybe she's born with it naturally. I don't really know, to be honest. But obviously, the long hair is meant to be like flowing and graceful in the wind, which is probably why they chose that sort of design for her. What else about her in particular? I can't remember if there's more. Everything, of course, associated with her is just pink. Everything is just incredibly pink because that's what Abuela wants to see. I like the little detail, of course, when fiance wants to have like 5 babies, and then she's obviously shocked by that because she doesn't really love him, and then like the flowers sprout from her head, a white one grows, showing like a little peek into her actual true emotions of that sort of thing, and Abuela just picks it off because it's not pink. sorry, a white flower grows, and the abuela picks up a white flower, and because it's not pink, it's not like, it doesn't fit the perfect vision of Isabella. We can get food in these. I didn't know that. Oh my god, we only got 5 minutes. Quick, rapid fire. Isabella, who's next? Dolores. Dolores has a load of sound wave design on her outfits, like even around her collar, it's like emanating sound waves. On her top, it's like the audio sound waves over the equalizer things. Down on the dress, there's loudspeakers, that sort of thing. She speaks really quietly. Her hairstyle kind of looks like a microphone, and the way it's tied up kind of really accentuates her ears, to really put emphasis on listening to everything. She has very sort of like soft mannerisms. She speaks very quietly because of course everything's very loud to her. She makes high-pitched noises. I assume it's meant to be kind of like a bat sort of thing, like high-pitched frequencies, things like that, squeaks, which other people don't tend to hear. What else? I don't really know. It reflects her own personality and her own shortcomings, that she feels like she's in the shadow, that she's only like one to listen and never really speak herself, which I would like to see explored further, but of course there was no time apparently. Who's next? Luisa, of course, she's big, she's strong. She's got dumbbells, I suppose, all over her dress, like as a motif. She's got a lot of sharp corners and triangles and the tops, which I assume are meant to be like mountains. I'm not really sure. The power being strength, of course, is meant to be, the reflection of both her mental strength and the fact she needs like that sort of strong constitution to withstand all the pressures that she's put under, of course. That I think is kind of straightforward. I feel like she's quite straightforward character. It's foreshadowed quite heavily how much pressure she's in, because every like early scene you see of her, she's been called to do something. Like even midway through the song, which is meant to be a moment of like relaxation, when she's being introduced, she gets called by a umbrella and she just goes off sprinting. Is there anything else in particular I want to say about her? No, I can't really think of it. Who's next? You got Camilo. He's of course got the chameleon thematic, like he's got little chameleons on his like poncho like thing. He's a teenager and he's trying to like basically find out who he is, like his identity and what makes him him, and for that sort of thing that is reflected in his shape-shifting powers. I immediately forgot what missions we had. Plants trees or shrubs and crafting things. Camilo is a cool character. Too bad we didn't see more of him. He's very dramatic, I suppose. And he's very much like a theatre kid, which I suppose reflects on the fact that he, shapeshifts to others and acts like them. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else to really say. There's like that sort of comedian aesthetic going on, like shapeshifting. Mirabelle, of course, she doesn't have a power or anything, so that's why her dress is, it's her usual dress, but she's done a lot of stitching on it to sort of like accentuate it and make it like feel more than it actually is, and more than just a sort of plain version of herself she thinks she is. She also has a load of motifs borrowed from her family, as little patches upon her dress and stuff, which is quite nice. She's a very strong butterfly motif, and tying in, linking with that link between her and Abuela. What else? She's into stitching and embroidery, which is like, about repairing and mending things, like how she's repairing the familial relationships and all that's going wrong in that sort of aspect. I think that's kind of it. Oh yeah, she has the glasses, of course, and her name sounds like Mira because she has different ways of looking at a perspective and that sort of things, and she's only, I suppose, purity of this perspective in the first place is because she is one without power, so she knows what it feels like to... I suppose she has something. She has to rely basically on herself rather than on her powers, but like a lot of the rest of her family does. Who's next? Antonio. He's dressed up to be like a Boy Scout. Is I assume what they're going for? Like a little tie, or is it like a cardigan, a jumper around his neck? I can't even remember. But he's got like a vest with like some animals on, which was in a promotional art, but I couldn't actually remember if it appeared in the story anywhere. I can't really remember much else. So there's a rapid fire, boom, 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 through all of the characters. I would love to have seen more from Dolores and Camino, because they basically got like no screen time. It also did make Dolores's like love progression feel very rushed at the end, where basically you don't see any Dolores. She's got a love which is betrothed to another, and then it's obviously that I forgot his name. Manuel or something. I don't think that's right. But yeah, the fact that they fall in love and start dating at the end is incredibly rushed. It feels like, because like certainly I think it's believable, because that guy is a very sort of straightforward guy, and you know, the fact that Dolores hears everything, she's probably knows about people's sadness very easily, by the fact that she can hear them when they don't think that she can hear her, and that sort of thing. But that guy was just pretty frank and honest, you know, kind of himbo energy, I suppose. And the fact that he's so genuinely straightforward, I suppose, it makes sense why she loves him in that aspect. But it would just obviously, even they didn't give it the time to breathe in the actual movie. Yeah, I mean, there's so much more I feel like I want to say. To be honest, it turns out half an hour is not enough time to talk about that sort of thing, but we are out of time after we do these daily exercises. I will just say, you know, just one personal emotional point I had during it is, the closest, no, it's not really, I didn't really come back close to crying, but I've never felt a more intense sadness than that moment in the movie when it's a flashback to Mirabelle, like, touching a door, and the door slowly fading away, and then she just panically sort of like looks back to the abuela, being like, what did I do wrong? Was it like that? What should I do? That sort of thing. Nothing broke my heart more than seeing that, and I was just like, oh my god. Because I guess I just sort of like imagined, what if that was just like my future child, and they look at me with that sort of expression, and I had to be one to break it to them, being like, your dream, I'm sorry, it can't be true. That filled me with a great sadness to see that scene. So much more than literally I think any other Disney movie has even come close to. Like, the closest other one was when Bing Bong was Bing Bong. I'll leave it at that if you haven't seen Inside Out. But yeah, it's made me incredibly sad to see that. What other things? There's more things I want to talk about, but I can't really think about it right now. You know, I probably should have wrote these all down, but you know, that's not how I do. I just like to talk off the top of my head. So anyway, basically, go watch Encanto. Well, presumably if you got this far, you've probably seen all of Encanto already, so you know, it's kind of falling on deaf ears, I suppose, to go watch it at this point. But yeah, I really liked it, and the songs are going to be stuck in my head forever. And I suppose it's a testament to it's basically, I suppose, all in all, it's a movie where I really like the plot conceptions and ideas, and the story it's telling through the plot, but not necessarily the execution of a story, not the execution of like the visuals and that sort of thing. That's all fantastic, I think. But because it's like a musical and it's so detached and there's so many things that we wanted to go through, I feel like it didn't. The plot points didn't really get the time they deserved, so plot was sacrificed in place of other things. Visually, it was very fun and impressive. I must imagine the animators had such a wonderful time during the entire sequences, especially Surface Pressure. The animations of the characters were really cool because you can see so much of a character's like personality with very short snippets, like in the way of Dolores and Bruno move in very sort of like eccentric ways. It was pretty cool to see. Dolores moves in like very soft and snappy ways, while Bruno is just very almost like robotic and inhuman in certain aspects. It's very awkward. What else? I don't know. That's kind of it. Basically, Encanto is a good movie, is all I really want to say. So, with that, I suppose we'll round off this episode here. So, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, description, shares are greatly appreciated. Join me, Dear Darling Discord, follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see you again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.